everyone. Welcome to the lecture 30 of week 6, and the title of today's lecture is Lexical Semantics. So, we have started talking about semantics from the previous class, and we will be talking about some more issues related to semantics in today's class, but our focus will be lexical semantics. So, we will be talking about the idea of lexical semantics and something called lexical relations. So, I am sure that you can understand what do we mean by lexical and semantics, because both the terms are known for you. And like the previous class, we will be going back to certain concepts that we had discussed earlier, and we will be talking about them in terms of lexical semantics. So, we will talk about something called lexical entry, and I will introduce you to the idea of entailment. Then we will talk about different relations in lexical semantics. Finally, we will briefly talk about the idea of computational lexical semantics. So, let us initially talk about the need of doing lexical semantics. Why do we do lexical semantics? So, we know that we talk about word meaning in different components of linguistics. For example, when we did morphology, you know that we talked about word, and we did talk about word meaning to some extent, but we will come back to word meaning when we highlight the meaning component in the domain of semantics, while we will be doing lexical semantics. So, traditionally in lexical semantics, people aim to discuss the meaning of each word in a language, and also to show how the words in a language are interrelated. So, it is not about the meaning of the word, but also the relationship between each other. So, this is something that you should remember while learning about lexical semantics, that we are highlighting the relation, the meaning with each other. And when we talk about lexical relation, we will say that lexical relations are central to the way speakers and hearers construct meaning. So, we were talking about construction of meaning in the semantics class, and we were also talking about ideas like compositionality, if you remember. So, we are talking about the same thing, construction of meanings, but here we will be highlighting on the lexical relations or meaning of different words which are related to each other. If you remember, we talked about something called presupposition in the last class. Today I will be talking about something which is similar but a different kind of relation. It is the relation of entailment. What does it mean? Entailment means the relation between two sentences where truth of one necessitates the truth of the other one. For example, if we say the sun melted the ice and the ice melted, and we can see that the first one is true and the second must be true. So, if we say that the sun melted the ice is true, then the ice melted is of course true, right. So, this kind of relationship is known as entailment, and we are saying that entailment relations can be seen as reflections of our lexical knowledge. So, when we talk about lexical knowledge, of course, we are talking about a component of the knowledge of language that we are highlighting for a number of classes, and we are saying here that entailment relations are important for our lexical knowledge. So, we know that we identify words as certain units. Of course, morpheme is a unit that we have learnt in morphology, but we also identify words as units, and then we examine the problems involved in pinning down their meanings. And then we look at the semantic relation between words, the meaning relation between words, and examine a network like structure. This is very important for you to understand. We are talking about a network like structure in terms of relations. For those who are coming from computer science background, I am sure you use lexical semantics for your work, and we will be also talking about a few things which are helpful for you. and for others who are doing core linguistics, you can also think about the network like structure in different ways, and for advanced learner I am sure you are familiar with this idea of semantic network. So, we are talking about some network like structure in terms of lexical semantics, and we are saying that these relations give to our mental lexicon. So, this network like structure is related to our mental lexicon. We are coming back to the idea of mental lexicon that we discussed previously. We already learnt about grammatical categories in both morphology and specifically in syntax. We know that verb, noun, etc. are grammatical categories, and different categories of words must be given different semantic descriptions. So, apart from the idea of grammatical category in terms of syntax, we did say that semantics is also important, because you know we are always talking about structure and meaning both while talking about anything in linguistics, any structure in linguistics. So, words in a language with the idiosyncratic information about the words are there in the dictionary or lexicon. So, if you think about any kind of dictionary, be it a hard copy or an online dictionary, I am sure there are certain things which you always remember when you talk about a dictionary, right. So, in lexical semantics we will refer to dictionary a number of times, because we will be talking about something called lexicon, and dictionary is also a kind of lexicon. So, we have some idiosyncratic information about the words in the dictionary. If you think about a hard copy dictionary or an online dictionary, you have certain information about words, right. So, when we deal with lexemes, I hope you remember what lexemes are. We discussed about lexemes while doing morphology. So, we deal with lexemes and semantic words and talk about listing them in the lexicon. So, lexemes are something which are related, if you remember, and we are talking about semantic words while talking about some kind of listing in the lexicon. So, be it a mental lexicon or a dictionary, there are some kind of listing, right. If you remember, we also briefly mentioned the difference between orthographic and grammatical words when we talked about morphology. So, I am asking you to think about the following point now. So, please pause at this point and think about the following. How did we talk about semantic components in morphology? So, we did talk about meaning. If you remember, when we did morphology, we said that yes, structure is important, but we have to think about the meaning component. So, now when we are doing semantics, we are coming back to morphology and we are saying that yes, in terms of words, meaning component is important, and we are talking about words here in today's class, right. So, now there are some examples where I am asking you to comment on a particular NP. You will figure out which one. He scored with his left foot. They made camp at the foot of the mountain, and I ate a foot long hot dog. So, I am of course talking about the NP foot, and now I am asking you to think about the fact whether they have different meanings. You can say that yes, they have different meanings, but I am asking you to think about the fact whether these are different lexemes or they are part of a same lexeme. This is tricky, right. The same word, but we are thinking about the fact whether they belong to a same lexeme or different. And we are also coming back to the idea of sense that we discussed while talking about key concepts of semantics. We are asking, are there different senses for these three words? So, the number 1 foot is talking about a part of the leg below the ankle. So, somebody is scoring, I mean it is like in terms of football. Foot 2 is for base or bottom of something, and the base of the mountain, I mean, and then foot 3 is basically a unit of length, which is 1/3 of a yard. So, now you can see that whether we are actually talking about a same lexeme or different lexemes is a tricky question, and in lexical semantics we always have to think about these tricky questions and think about different components of meaning while talking about word meanings. And what is lexicon? We are coming back to the idea of lexicon again. The lexeme's pronunciation, the grammatical status, its meaning relation with other lexemes, everything is a part of lexicon. So, you can think about mental lexicon, you can think about a dictionary, whatever it is, you have to think about the following topics, the following components. Now, if we think about something called a lexical entry, imagine an entry of a dictionary. What are the components of a dictionary entry? You can open any entry in a real dictionary and see that there are certain things which are listed, which are part of the listing. So, we can say that a lexical entry may contain several lexemes or senses. It is not that one lexical entry will always refer to one single lexeme, but it can have different lexemes or senses. This is super important for our purpose, because when you will be actually dealing with some data, you have to pay attention to this factor, whether it belongs to a same lexeme or different lexeme. So, when we group lexemes and lexical entries, they vary. So, think about the example that we have just discussed with the example of foot. So, while we are grouping different kind of foots together, and you can say that there are of course different lexemes. So, grouping lexemes and lexical entries will vary. We have to examine while talking about their meaning. So, I will also talking about I will be talking about two different relations or two different concepts which are important in terms of lexical semantics, rather lexicon. One is a lexical relations. So, we can say a particular lexeme may be simultaneously in a number of these relations. So, we will be talking in detail about certain lexical relations in this class, and I hope you can come back to this slide after knowing about the different lexical relations and you can understand it. So, we can consider the lexicon as a network, as we have briefly mentioned previously, and we are not considering them only as a listing of words like a dictionary. So, this is super important for us. We are not considering them only as a listing, but we are considering them as a network. This is very important, how they are related to each other. And if you think about something called lexical field, we can say that a group of words are related by meaning, they create a lexical field. So, now I will talk about certain meaning relations or lexical relations. Some of you are familiar with this, and some of us learnt about certain lexical relations as a part of our school grammar briefly. Some of the relations are very new to us, and when we will be exploring these different relations, we will be actually talking about the network. We will always keep in mind that there is actually a network instead of a listing. The first relation that I am mentioning is the homonymy relation. What does it mean? Homonyms are unrelated senses of the same phonological word. Why we are using the term phonological word? Because we are talking about the phonological shape of it. So, you can say that these are lexemes of the same syntactic category and with the same spelling. So, we have different kinds of examples of homonyms on this slide. So, the first one is lexemes which belong to the same syntactic category, but they have difference in meaning and they have same spelling as well. So, a lap can mean circuit of a course, it can also mean a part of a body when sitting down in terms of the action of sitting down. We can have homonyms which are from the same category, but with different spelling. For example, the verbs ring and ring, you have different spelling, but these are of course homonyms. The phonological shape is the same. the phonological word is the same and these have different meanings. So, they belong to the same syntactic category, right. The third one is when we consider forms from different categories, but with the same spelling. So, the verb bear, to bear with, and the noun bear, an animal. So, you have absolutely same spelling, but these are words from different syntactic categories. And the fourth one is they are from different categories and with different spelling, like not and not. Now, let us talk about a relationship called polysemy. Polysemy describes a single word with several closely related but slightly different meanings. For example, if we use the word face, we can say face of a person and face of a clock. So, when we say face of a clock, we know it is not exactly the same sense like the face of a person, but there is some kind of related meaning associated with the words, right. So, we can also say that homonymy and polysemy are somehow related concepts. When we talk about polysemy, it is invoked if the senses are judged to be related. So, we will talk about related sense only when we talk about polysemy. Synonymy is a very well known concept also in terms of our previous understanding of semantic relations, lexical relations specifically. So, we can say that synonyms are different phonological words that have the same or very similar meaning, like couch or sofa, large or big. This is simple. And antonymy is just opposite to what synonymy says. Antonyms are words which are opposite in meaning. So, we have different types of antonymy which are mentioned on the slide. For example, if we talk about complementary antonyms, we say that there is some kind of contradiction. These are contradictory, binary or simple antonyms. For example, dead or alive for animals, pass or fail for a test, etc. There is also something called gradable antonyms. There is something called gradable antonyms when we talk about intermediate terms as well. So, rich, poor, fast, slow, these are gradable. We are talking about some sort of grade, and there are certain relative terms as well. If you think about intermediate terms, the examples are hot, warm, tepid, cool and cold. So, we are basically talking about certain intermediate terms which are also gradable. We can talk about reverse antonymy when we talk about some kind of reverse relations in describing movements, for example, push, pull, up, down, etc. And converse relations where we talk about relations between two entities from an alternative viewpoints, like above, below. We are talking about two alternative viewpoints, employer, employee, etc. Hyponymy is the next relation that we will describe. Hyponymy is basically a relation of inclusion. You can say that dog and cat are hyponyms of animal, or sister and mother are hyponyms of woman. And another concept of lexical relations is the idea of meronymy. So, the term meronymy is used when we talk about a part-whole relationship between lexical items. For example, we can say that cover and page are meronyms of book. The whole term here, book, is sometimes called the holonym. So, now I will introduce you with this idea of computational lexical semantics, which might be useful for some of them, which is an emerging area now. So, when we talked about certain lexical relations and we also talked about some kind of listing and we also talked about some kind of network. So, when we focus on the network, we do say that we use this idea of network in terms of computational lexical semantics. For example, when we talk about something called large lexicons, when we deal with a lot of data, then we can talk about large lexicons, and these semantic relations will be super useful for us when we will be talking about the relationship between different words in large lexicons in terms of certain networks. And computational lexical semantics talks about the models for the creation of different kinds of computerized lexicons for the automatic treatment of natural language. So, if you work or happen to work in the area of NLP, natural language processing, these lexical semantics will be useful for you. You can think about computerized lexicons and also automatic treatment of natural language by using the relationship of different words in terms of lexical semantics. So, we have come to the conclusion part of this lecture, and we have learned a couple of new concepts in this. So, we will be talking about them. Initially, we said that in lexical semantics we study word meanings, and we also came to know about this idea of entailment. The relation called entailment reflect our lexical knowledge, which is of course part of our knowledge of language as a whole. We do say that the lexicon includes pronunciation, grammatical status, meaning and meaning relation with other lexims. So, when we are saying lexicon, we are not only referring to mental lexicon, but we are also referring to dictionary. Then we also said that there are different types of lexical relations, and we talked about all these types with examples. So, this is little tricky. So, I will ask you to go back to these definitions again and check the examples. And as we have discussed all the examples from English, it is advised that if you can also list a number of examples which are from your own language. So, we did talk about the following lexical relations: homonymy, polysemy, synonymy, antonymy, hyponymy and meronymy. And finally, we did talk about computational lexical semantics, which is an emerging field where we use the idea of network in terms of dealing with concepts like large lexicon. So, these are the references. Thank you.